Hey, Helen. All right, so we're back. We promised the audience that we would talk about this a little bit and process. So I don't know if you were able, because you were back here in the room with me, but in my introduction, I said that we were going to wrap up this session with kind of a how do these pieces fit together into a cohesive whole kind of conversation. And so we've heard from 4 of our 7 funded projects. So can you tell us a little bit about how all these pieces fit together with also considering the projects that weren't necessarily represented here today?
Yeah, good point. Okay, so we heard from 4 of our global scientists. We covered at the tectonic elements of it, the sedimentary thickness, the crustal thickness, and Mikhail, the heat flow database, and Mikhail wrapped it up at the end. And actually, Mikhail touched on this. It's not enough to do one of these things, and I think that's what's happened in the past. There's been a huge focus on just heat flow, but you got to do heat flow with the tectonics, and you've got to pull it all together. And really, our funding's primary objective was to do that, was to promote that multidisciplinary subsurface approach to understanding this. And those grants, we really tried to pursue that strategy. So we made sure there was observational data sets, such as the ones Paul showed, the tectonic elements, here's a fault, here's a volcano, but also, and Sven's borehole temperature data set, but also modeling. And the modeling data sets were the ones that we didn't show today, actually. But modeling is hugely important in parts of the globe that you don't have data, or that it's hidden from view. There's no seismic, there's no wells. And some of the examples of our modeling projects, the 2 that we're missing today, include things like the estimation of important crustal boundaries. So whether it's the depth to the moho, or the depth where the part of the lithosphere ends and hits the asthenosphere. And those 2 boundaries are really critical for understanding that surface heat flow. So we took both approaches, and that's actually really common in the oil and gas industry. We call it bottoms up, which is the modeling, and tops down, which is the observation. And it's a technique that we employ because it ensures that we can assess geothermal potential even in regions where there's limited data available. And Paul showcased that so well in his presentation of the Hoggard, because most of Africa falls into that category. So watch this space for the other 2 projects and the modeling, but that's why
Awesome.
we've got to get it all.
And I love that you noted that we're trying to actually adopt an approach to exploration that is one that's a model in the oil and gas industry. Transfer from the oil and gas industry into geothermal. And this is something that we try to live as well in our research and development efforts and so this is something that's I think really important in terms of coming up with new types of outcomes and making leaps forward. So here, Helen, here's another one, and it's one that our presentations today didn't quite cover, and I think it's something I'm getting pinged a lot on LinkedIn right now with this question, so I think it's something that we should probably chat about, which is Google's role. So we talked about the subsurface in our presentations. What about the surface, and how does Google fit in here in the grander scheme of things?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, maybe I'm so biased being a geologist, I immediately focus on the subsurface, but we know that the right location for geothermal involves combining surface level information that pinpoints ideal heating and power markets with that subsurface data revealing the potential. So both are critical, and our approach at InnerSpace to assess the surface suitability is within a very broad context. So we include demand, but also transmission capacity, risks that might be competition from other power sources, data availability. Do we have seismic? Do we have borehole data? Is there a risk because we have no data? And then even potential obstacles, because there are areas in our planet, of course, that are protected areas, or there are legal constraints to drilling a well. And all of this data is important when you come to determining surface suitability. And of course, many of these data sets exist within the framework of the Google Earth Engine. And that's what makes Google such a powerful partner. They have this amazing data set already. And so in our Project InnerSpace core team, I have a co-lead of the surface, Stephen Lee, and he's an energy demand and a machine learning expert. And he's been really working closely with the Google Earth team and the wider Google team. And he's pushing the boundaries on defining heat and power demand. Their work is amazing. They're going down, they're utilizing satellite data right down to the building level and combining it with machine learning to do building by building heat and electricity demand. It's phenomenal work. So that's where it all comes in. It's those big data sets with machine learning, and that's going to pull together the surface suitability for this. And I think, you know, next time Pivot, you'll hear way more about the surface. I just hogged the space today.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love that. And, you know, when we launched phase one, you know, probably a year and a half ago now, one of our foundational missions for phase one was to focus on the world's 2050 population centers and demand centers. And so the Google partnership is really going to help us press the gas on that focus in terms of surface data. All right, so we only have 8 minutes left. I knew this time would fly. Let's try to run through a couple of more questions here. In terms of stakeholders, who's going to use this freely accessible global map of geothermal resources in the world?
Yeah, good point and good reminder. This is free, accessible to everyone. And we have identified actually a really wide, diverse group of target users. So we get approached a lot, and Jamie gets approached all the time by large industrial corporations, and they come to us and say, hey, I've got 15 plants globally. Help us understand which of our plants I should focus on. What is the best or the most likely geothermal potential that we can work further. And our role has been to assist them in pinpointing where they should concentrate their efforts. And I just love that, you know, soon we can direct them to the platform and they can answer that question for themselves. So they're definitely a target user for us, those big groups. But they're not the only ones. We have also engaged with geothermal startups. We know that, you know, when you start a company, you're cash strapped, they're getting access to data and access to well QC'd, put in useful data can be expensive. So we really want to help the startups focus their attention, but also just getting them access to data. But one of the interesting things as we've gone through this is the engagement we've got from other groups. So completely external to geothermal, we've got a lot of traction with natural hydrogen and critical minerals, because they recognize that the data sets we're generating here are not just applicable to geothermal, but have a very wide and expansive use. So that's been an interesting, and we had a pivot session just in that. So education's another vital build. So you know, governments, educators, investors to hold the purse strings. Big, diverse target group for this product. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and with the focus on having a reliable, accessible tool that anybody can use to understand where the low-hanging fruit for geothermal development is, right? So that can essentially, stakeholders are essentially potentially anyone in the world, which is also really exciting. All right, so fast forward here. We have a major international collaboration ongoing with phase one, all types of researchers from all over the world participating, lots of data sharing going on for phase one. How is this, how is this built? What do the guts look like in terms of how the various stakeholders are participating in phase one?
Yeah, well, we've had a massive response externally, not just with our phase one projects, but we've been engaging with really lots of individual groups over the past year, and that's been a huge part of my role, just in addition to setting up the grants, is just to do outreach. And we've got traction with universities, service companies. We have an oil and gas company donating data in Africa, which is incredible. That's the first of many, we hope. There's been think tanks, AI, ML specialists, you name it. There's been really great engagement. And we've also been really fortunate to receive data sets as gifts. And these have been coming in from individuals who are deeply committed to the cause, people with vast levels of experience. We've had the ex-BP discipline lead for exploration donate his tectonic database to us. We've had people like Duncan McGregor, who's a subject expert in Africa, donate data. And we've had collaborations with the Global Earth Monitoring System to provide us with seismic risk and hazard maps. They're the leading experts in understanding risk and hazard around earthquakes. And we've teamed up with MapStand as well, who are experts in location data for the energy transition and energy infrastructure to provide us with borehole locations and seismic locations. So we have really had such a positive outreach and such positive contributions. And I guess the task of me and our team is now to collate these data into a useful and meaningful manner. So that's what we're focusing our attentions on now.
Love it. All right, so before we segue into a question that I'm seeing a lot here, which is how can we help? How can we get involved? How can we engage with you? Let's first talk about how this tool stays, how we're building it accurately and reliably, but also how we're going to keep it that way. So what are we doing to make sure it's top of the line in terms of accuracy, but what ideas are there floating around to keep it relevant as we go forward?
Yeah, I think you could tell today from the four presenters that data accuracy and reliability is like the heart of what they do. These guys are expert scientists. It's key to their reputation, is key to their data sets. So we are dedicated ensuring accuracy of data and reliability, and that's what all the metadata and building of the metadata is for. Firstly, each of those projects maintains its own rigorous QA/QC, and we heard a little bit of that in the presentation, but we also internally undergo a peer reviewing process. So we have established peer reviews within the team, and once we go continent by continent and finish a continent, we're going to ask expert leaders, for example, in Africa, to review the database before it goes out to the public. So we're really trying to make sure that accuracy and reliability is key here. And to further enhance that, we'll also plan to publish peer review articles and journals detailing both the data but also methodologies, and that's really important. So at every step of these projects, there's rigor to our process, and that means that the data is scientifically accurate and also repeatable. People can pick it up, have confidence in it, and reuse it, and that's what we want to achieve here.
Awesome. All right, so we got 2 minutes left to close it out. We launched InnerSpace Phase 1 essentially last year at Pivot, and had a call last year to anyone who wanted to collaborate or had ideas, and we were amazing success there in terms of response, and we used that response to build to now. Right. So how would you suggest parties who are interested in engaging, how would you suggest people engage with us going forward if they're interested in contributing?
Yeah, perfect. Well, for me, there's 5 areas that you can help or contribute with. You can contribute data. So if you have access to valuable surface or subsurface data, please get in touch. You can contribute to funding. You get in touch with Jamie for that one. And we love forming collaborative partnerships, and we've done that successfully right up to Phase 1, because we very firmly believe that we build rather than recreate. So partnerships is ideal. You can join us and be a peer review or an expertise, or just spread the word. Helping spread the word and engaging with the geothermal community, those are all ways of helping. So please, any help you want to offer, we're all open to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Helen, for being the driving force behind this really eventful and awesome first year of Phase 1. So we've got a little building to go, but this is a hell of a start. And thanks again to Google for the partnership. One thing I'll say to the audience is over the next 3 or 4 months, there will be more about InnerSpace Phase 1 announced. So stay tuned. We're on a fast track here to start rolling this thing out, and are really excited to have the collaborations that we have. So thank you, everybody. We're out of time, but please reach out to us if you want to collaborate, and we'll see you later.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of Pivot. Bye.